We have a slightly different internal comms podcast this time. Instead of an interview, we're going to listen in on a conversation between Cathy Sinclair and Carol Castle, who share the role of Director of Student Recruitment and Admissions here at Sheffield Hallam. Cathy and Carol are keen to use their experience to help others understand the many advantages of job sharing, both for individuals and the university. They've developed a job sharing toolkit, which you should check out on the staff intranet if you're job sharing yourself or thinking about it, or if you manage or work alongside people who do. This podcast is a great listen for anyone who wants to hear how those two balance their personal and professional lives and make their arrangement work for themselves and those around them.
I'm Cathy Sinclair. I'm Co-Director of Student Recruitment and Admissions here at Sheffield Hallam University. I've been here about 15 years now, and through a range of different roles, but mainly within the student recruitment and admissions area.
And I'm Carol Castle. I job share with Cathy as Co-Director of Student Recruitment and Admissions. And this very week marks my 20th anniversary at Sheffield Hallam, where I started as a graduate intern on a 9-month contract and have been incredibly fortunate to have an amazing varied career in the university, even though it shocks me immensely to say 20 years.
So we're really looking forward today, aren't we, to talking a little bit more about job sharing. It's something that we are particularly passionate about, and I think it's just a really good opportunity for us to have a bit of time to reflect and think about what that experience has meant to us, and particularly on our journey here at Sheffield Hallam.
Absolutely. It's a really good chance, Cathy, isn't it, to think back to those very early conversations that we had about job sharing, which was actually in the job that we did previous to this one. So when you think back to those days, can you remember much about why you wanted to job share and how did we start?
It's funny, isn't it? I think we've worked together for, probably pretty much most of the time, definitely in my career at Sheffield Hallam, and it was not something that ever really crossed my mind. But I think at the point that we both started to think about families and other responsibilities and things that we wanted to get out of life, actually, when I came back from my maternity leave, it just felt like a really natural conversation to have. You were covering my job at the time, weren't you, on my mat leave? And it just felt really a good opportunity to just explore what those options could be and how that could really open up some opportunities for us.
I remember us really trying to find out across the university who already job shares. And we really had to ask around, didn't we? We had some really interesting conversations with colleagues. I remember we managed to find one academic pair of colleagues who were job sharing who had some really interesting insight about how they make that work and were realistic about what the challenges are. And I remember speaking to 2 or 3 other job shares across the university. But it was difficult at that time, wasn't it, to really find who was job sharing. What advice is there out there? How do we start? And I think it's fair to say we've always been quite passionate about how we could use our job share to improve the advice and information that's out there really for the people across the university to job share as well.
Definitely. And I think one of those early pieces of sort of research for us when we started to think, well, what is job sharing? We spoke to people, as you mentioned, and then we thought, well, there must be stuff out there, you know, if we look on the internet and just kind of see what's there. And we came across some really interesting research, didn't we, about models of job sharing and what works. And it made us realise there isn't one way to do it. And actually, there's so many different opportunities that you can tailor to a specific role. You can tailor to the individuals who are doing that at a given time. And I think that really gave us a good sort of starting point, didn't it, of, you know, doing that research. And I guess it's probably worth us reflecting a little bit about those first stages of kind of when we set that job share up and how we did it and what we learned from that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think what helped us was we had some really early conversations about our values, didn't we, about what we each expected from the job share, but also what we were both really worried about from the job share. And I know we had some honest conversations about what it would feel like to literally share a job. Would we lose our own identity within that? Would it be really difficult if there was a task actually that we both wanted to do or an opportunity we both wanted to get involved in? And I think it helped that we called that out and we discussed it and we had a conversation about it. And I think it also helped that we really broke the job down, didn't we, into different elements and started to think about which of the job share models that we'd read about would work for this job and would work for us the most.
Definitely. And I think by actually articulating that agreement, that was a sort of safe space, wasn't it, that we went back to. We had it written down in black and white. You know, these are all our hopes, fears. This is what we say we're going to do about it. And actually that gave us something to then, when we reviewed things, which we regularly did, and we actively sought feedback from people on our teams, our line manager, but also the wide range of stakeholders that we work with, it gave us something to reflect back on. Does this still feel right? Have we demonstrated the things we wanted to? Have we what we wanted to? And to kind of keep refreshing and reviewing and definitely evolving that. I think things have changed a lot, haven't they, in the time that we've job shared together, which is probably 6 years now, is it?
Yeah, and 2 different jobs as well, which I think is really interesting. We might want to talk about that sort of experience of going for a job and an interview together a bit later. But I'm just thinking back to that first model that we chose, that sort of hybrid job share model, didn't we, where actually we've always felt it was important for us to share the objectives of both of the roles actually that we've done together, but to have our distinct areas of responsibility and lead within that. And I think it's interesting actually just thinking back now to when we first started, as we've got to really know each other and what our particular strengths are, what we both really enjoy, how we've been able to develop that model even further to make sure that we're as efficient as we can be in the job share as well.
And I think those opportunities, definitely where we've kind of had a model, we've looked at how does that draw on each of our strengths and kind of being really clear about what we feel our differences and our strengths are, but then how do we sort of peer support each other? And I think for me, one of the things I've really valued in establishing this relationship is that peer support. It's somebody to bounce ideas off, to, definitely that 2 heads are better than one, and an approach to sort of creating something really exciting and different, and challenging yourself on how you collaborate and working with others, and being open to doing things differently and drawing on different perspectives, I think is really powerful. And I think that's definitely one of the things, isn't it, that we feel is a real benefit to the institution.
100%. And I think, even if one of the first main drivers for wanting to job share was quite practical, I guess, it was about maintaining sanity, being able to have a family, to do other things outside of work, which we're both really keen on different areas that we volunteer outside of work, aren't we? But now, as time's gone on, it's less about that and it is more about those other benefits, 100%. And I think, that's something that everybody could benefit from, whether you're in a job share or not. Actually, once you open up to that sort of collaboration with another person and you open yourself up to sharing your strengths and weaknesses in that way, you really can benefit from having that peer support, which is massive, absolutely massive. I mean, Cathy, I just feel like you're my biggest champion. You're my mentor, my coach, built into the job as well. And I know I'm better for that in all aspects of my life.
And I know we say that frequently, don't we? It is hugely satisfying, and I feel like of the years of my professional career, these last 6 years have definitely been the best. They've been the most challenging in so many ways, but actually I've grown so much and our relationship has grown so much, which I think is something that feels really special, and I know it's something we still feel like there's a lot of potential in to kind of keep taking on challenges, which we've been recently doing, and that's helping us sort of push each other, and I think we have pushed each other, haven't we? There's been things that have come up where one of us might have been more apprehensive, but actually we've gone, together we feel like we've got the strength and the ability to do it. Let's jump, let's take a chance, let's again push ourselves and this model to see what it can achieve, and it just feels great. And to have somebody to make you laugh and share those difficult times with, as well as kind of build up the strategy and work with the teams, and it is the whole range of positives and negatives. There's real challenges that we have to face as a collective, but also as individuals. And I think, again, it really helps us work through those things.
Do you think anyone could job share?
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because I think, we were very fortunate that we knew each other before. But actually, I feel like the more and more I've understood about the job sharing model, I believe that absolutely they can. I think it's about getting those foundations right. I think it's about understanding the specifics of a role, really deconstructing it, like we said, about, what are the components, what are the deliverables, how could they be delivered across a range of different people. But also, understanding what are the core values, who are the people involved in that, and how do you harness the best out of that? And they don't have to be completely the same, and actually a diversity of skills is really important. I think the foundational part, though, is the values and the work ethic. And I think that is probably where we feel quite well matched, that we have a very similar approach to, what we place as important in our roles and in our personal life, and how we work and how we feel passionate about what we do. I think that is the bit that you sort of need to match on. But actually the other things, the skills and diversity, can really build on around that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's worth being honest about that work that is valuable to put in up front as well, isn't it? And I guess the other bit is the support you have around you. I mean, we were very fortunate, weren't we, that our line manager believed in us, believed that a job share could work at a level. You know, I think at the time we were the most senior job share in the university. I think that's still the case. We were very fortunate we had a line manager who shared that vision of how effective it could be. And I do think that makes a big difference, having those conversations with your manager, with the people that you manage, with the team around you, colleagues around you as well, to understand perhaps what some of their worries might be or some of their ideas might be. I think that work that put in up front to design it, to understand the parameters around the job share does pay off. I agree with you. I do think most people could job share. Now, the other interesting question, I guess, is can all jobs be job shared?
Yeah, and I think that role design piece is a really interesting one, isn't it? And I think we've been trying to really reflect and challenge ourselves when we've even gone through recruitment processes and designing roles, but equally putting that challenge out to the institution, haven't we? Because most things you should be able to, even if it's working with people or it's very project-based or technology-based, you know, there are components to any job that you can try and sort of see if you can deconstruct and work through. And I think, for me, again, one of the successes for us has been actually how I think the institution's probably surprised itself to an extent that everyone was really supportive. You know, we actively sought feedback, didn't we, from stakeholders in how the role was going and whether, you know, our fears of, do constantly people have to repeat themselves or do they feel that they get a different service level out of one of us than the other? And people were really proactive actually in giving us positive feedback and feeling like that was something they were really proud of actually for us and the institution and their part in it. And I think that's why by getting more people to think about this, you know, it isn't just in the moment of do you have a job share that you're managing or are there people who are coming up and thinking about that, but thinking about any next steps of role design and change and team activity, there is always an opportunity there to stop and think differently.
And let's be honest as well, we know that there are issues within the sector in terms of EDI, especially female progression. We know it is a very practical issue, that a lot of women do find their careers halting when they have families or other commitments outside of work, particularly. I'm not saying it's an exclusive female issue, but the data does show that there is something going on there. And job sharing is one way of making sure that roles function on a full-time basis, which is what an organisation needs. We need to be here for our students on a full-time basis, but enables individuals to have that flexibility of part-time. And I think that is especially true in this post-pandemic world as well, when actually people have had that chance to reflect on what you want out of your wider life. And sometimes the motivation for working part-time might very rightly just be, I want some more time. I want, for my own well-being, a bit more space, a bit more diversity in my life. And I think job sharing is one undervalued and underused tool, isn't it, really? And I think that's our motivation for the job share toolkit that we've created for the university, isn't it?
Absolutely, because, you know, there are practical tips and tools, aren't they, in terms of the people that we've met and what we've learned and established. And I think that toolkit is just our way of trying to, well, let's capture all of this incredible experience and different perspectives and approaches into something that can help guide people through the process. And I guess with the toolkit, I think one of the interesting things is we've talked really actively about all the benefits and all the positives. And, you know, there are countless positives and we could talk about those all day. But I think it's also really important to be honest about what are those main challenges, and it's probably worth kind of sharing some of those. What do you think?
Oh yes, definitely. Let's get into the challenges, and then I think we've got to touch on the tools, because I can't believe we've been talking about job sharing all this time, Cathy. We've not mentioned our beloved OneNote, which is the most practical tool which has enabled us to make sure that people never have to repeat themselves, or very rarely need to repeat themselves. We are only human after all. But yes, let's get into some of those challenges really about job sharing. I mean, we talked earlier, didn't we, about one of our first concerns being that loss of identity as well. And, you know, that's not necessarily come to pass. I think we've seen the benefit of a new identity, the job share identity, and the championing all of that can bring. But it is safe to say that it is a challenge, isn't it, that actually sometimes, especially with us having quite, I guess, similar names as well, we get a Carol, Cathy, which I do with my own children, mix their names up, so I don't take too much offence at that. But it is different, isn't it? I think that you've got to sort of unpick, what does that mean? What am I comfortable with our Carol Cathy persona, which I am so proud of? But how does that align with my Carol persona as well, and who I am as an individual, what I am known for within that?
Definitely, and I think we are really reflecting on that a lot at the moment, aren't we? Because we want people to understand exactly what the power of this collective is, but also that, you know, what the different strengths are that we both individually bring to it, and how we support each other, and how that can kind of be utilised across the institution as well. So I think that's something that we are reflecting on. I think initially we kind of worked really hard to be one, to be known as one, and nobody think of any difference. And actually now, you know, we feel confident enough in what we've achieved that we're able to still have that identity, but also have our individual identities. And I guess that's what led us to doing a lot more outside of work as well, which again feels really positive, that we've built up a portfolio career by stealth in a way, you know, that we've done all the things that we've done in work and taken those opportunities. And similarly, at the moment we've flexed our hours to be able to pick up project work, but then actually realising that extra capacity gave us opportunities to test ourselves in different ways outside of the institution, which obviously supports us, brings back things to our relationship and our way of working, but also back to the university. And then maximising the time you have together. What we try to do is we try and have a time where we're actually together face to face, but really making the most of that where we do, so we can really unpick the knotty issues and the challenges. And we're not just telling everybody, kind of telling each other kind of word for word, line by line about what happened that week. You know, we've kind of covered that off by how we've shared information in the OneNote, but actually then we're focusing that energy on really getting the best of both of our minds coming together.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And I think not being afraid to sometimes go, do you know what? We've not seen each other. We need a good hour together, and not being afraid to realise that spending that hour together will really take something forward. So it is worth doing. It's not duplication. It's really worth doing. We focused a whole section of the toolkit on communication tools. We love our OneNote. You might have picked up on that. But there are other tools available, and they're included on the toolkit that other partnerships use.
So I guess people might also be interested to know is, what do we do when we disagree, Carol?
Yes, that's such an interesting question, isn't it? I mean, I am genuinely struggling to think of a time when we fundamentally disagreed on something. I think we've had frequent times where we would have had different ways of going about it. I think that's probably because we put that groundwork in. And I think when I reflect back on that, it really is the maturity of the job share, of understanding the benefits of different ways of doing things, and actually what you can learn from that. And we do have this written down, don't we, actually, Cathy? We did talk about what really does happen if we fundamentally disagree. We did have a bit of a 3-step plan of what we would do in that occasion. So maybe we should recap on that at some point, just in case that situation does arise and we need to remember what we said we would do. Line managers of job shares as well. We've got some good case studies on the toolkit. We're really keen to expand that a little bit as well. So if you line manage a job share, we'd love to hear from you as well. Build up those real life experiences to really help the broader university to maximise the use of job shares. And as we really think that's a massive opportunity actually for, especially in the current climate, to support talent management and retention, to support progression, and to hopefully help the wider institution to benefit from some of those things we've talked about in terms of peer support and staff development. I think it's really interesting as well, some of the line managers of job shares that we've spoken to fairly consistently said that it's actually saved them time. I think it's fair to say that it's a bit of a shared sort of anxiety, really. Having 2 people to line manage rather than 1 is going to create much more work for line managers. But those who've done it consistently tell us that that's not the case. It's myths like that that are really important to break down.
Every time we hear about a job share, we're absolutely on them, aren't we? Oh, would you like to add to this? Is there anything you want to reflect, make this more useful, and really getting feedback on it?
I think we've talked quite a bit about professional benefits, haven't we? But what are the personal benefits to you about job sharing?
I think the personal benefits have been huge, but given me the ability to feel really satisfied in my professional life, which is still a really important part of my personal life, but then equally felt like I have the space and time to be the mother and the wife and the daughter and, the friend that I also want to be outside of work. So I feel like I give everything to my work when I'm here, but actually when I'm at home, I really give everything to that. And I think that makes me feel really that I've got a good balance. For my own kind of mental well-being, I need to make sure I build in exercise and space to do that. And also in terms of my home, if I didn't have that day off a week, then it would definitely look more of a state than it already does.
I feel so grateful to have got into running because of exactly the things that you've talked about as well. It feel like it's so good for my mental health and well-being to have that. And the luxury, I will never ever tire of feeling incredibly lucky to be able to start, for me on a Monday morning going out for a really long run. the time to be able to have energy is massive. And we've touched on our kids, haven't we? You know, I've got 2 girls, and having time again and energy to focus on them. Everybody says how quickly it goes, and it's proving to be 100% true. So having that time at school gates, to see them running out towards me while they still want to know who I am and hold my hand is just amazing.
We hope you enjoyed hearing that conversation. If you're currently job sharing or you line manage job sharers, please do get in touch, particularly if you're an academic member of staff, so we have a different perspective. You can contact Carol or Cathy or the internal comms team. We'd all love to hear about your experience. Thank you very much for listening.